It's Tuesday, so we're live again. Today we're talking about balancing hormones naturally. So not with bioidenticals, and we're not talking about synthetics, but just making you build your own hormones. So this month is all about hormones. So we'll talk about thyroid throughout this. We're talking about progesterone throughout this. And then, was it next week? We're talking about or overcoming adrenal fatigue. Root cause of multiple symptoms. And again, thyroid, like we've said before, is never really a primary problem. It's always secondary. So we're going to hit hard on that too. And then the last thing that we'll do on November 1st is we'll talk about fixing the thyroid naturally. And that'll be a very interesting one. And we'll talk a little bit about that stuff too today. So please feel free to join us, share us, and like us. And as you know, I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. I practice natural functional medicine or functional lifestyle medicine. Whole goal is to try to fix the body naturally. And for the most part, what we do is look at what's causing the problem, how things work, and just fix it from the ground up. Create a sustainable lifestyle change. And this is Holly with us today.
Hi everybody, I'm Holly Hajjaj. I'm the Wellness Director here at AFC. I teach yoga and am involved in a lot of holistic practices. I have a background in women's studies, and I'm working at getting into physical therapy, and excited to be here working with Dr. G, learning so much, and have been really excited about these talks on hormones especially, because I just think it's so tremendously helpful. So glad to have you too. So I'm ready to get started if you are.
Good. So feel free to post your questions as you have them. We'll try to answer some as we go. I know Holly's paying attention to some of that. We're going to post some stuff as we go too. And then any kind of questions that don't get asked, I'll go back through and we'll answer those. So Holly, last time we went through a lot of biochemistry. And for some it was probably overwhelming. But basically explaining how we make hormones naturally, right? The process of how we convert food into actual hormonal processes, and then we talked about how we mess it up.
Right. So we talked about 3 basic hormonal processes for synthesizing hormones. The first pathway was for synthesizing serotonin and melatonin.
From tryptophan.
From tryptophan,
yeah.
But end result was serotonin and melatonin. And then the second pathway we talked about was making hormones for dopamine and also thyroid. And then the third pathway that we talked about was making hormones for progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA. And for all of these, that's how we talked about how to make them with the foods, the beans, greens, and fermented foods, but then also how we exhaust them through essentially stress hormones. So I just kind of wanted to recap for everyone, since that was a lot of information, like you said. Yeah. He's too smart, folks.
It was a nerd explosion, right?
He's too smart.
Yeah, a patient today, I was explaining stuff to her, and she was just kind of pissed off, and she said she just got back from her regular doctor, and he didn't have any explanation. He didn't draw any of this stuff out. He didn't explain anything to her, and here I was drawing her the pathway of why she has what she has, and that's important. It's important to know why and how things work. So one of the things we talked about last week too was all 3 of those pathways that build the hormones that make you feel awesome are usually exhausted, especially for women, by age 35. And that's because by age 35, you're hormonally bankrupt. And as Holly was explaining those, there's limiting factors. There's 3 or 4 vitamins and minerals that get exhausted to make epinephrine for anxiety, that get exhausted for cortisol to make chronic depression, and there's just not enough to make the dopamine to feel happy, the melatonin to sleep, the serotonin to feel good. Do you remember what those were? Can you tell them?
Well, I was half listening as I was trying to share our talk, but I'm going to take a guess. And we're talking about the things that are lost.
Well,
the B vitamins.
Yeah.
The B vitamins, I'm going to say magnesium.
That's right.
Zinc.
Yep.
Those three?
Yeah, especially. Your three biggest ones specifically are B6, B12, and magnesium. But as we looked at those pathways before, there's several B vitamins in there. And there's zinc and there's other nutrients in there. But those are the main ones. So like, Holly's right on with that. And what happens is basically you think about, let's say I have enough lumber and nails to make happy houses or stressed houses. And we just choose to make stressed houses, and we don't have enough supplies left over to make the happy houses. That's what it ends up. So as much as we talk about this today, I mean, our real solution long term is just to stop exhausting hormones or create resiliencies for those hormones. So we'll try to touch on some of that today, but the main thing is we're going to talk about how we build some of these hormones just through food, basic food. Mm-hmm. So one of the things is progesterone, and I'll post some of this as we go. Let me make sure I'm on here. So with progesterone, okay, there we go. So with progesterone, the main nutrients for that is magnesium, and that's pretty much anything green. So we have this tetrahedral molecule that's in human blood, and it has iron in the middle. That makes blood red. If we have magnesium in the middle of that tetrahedral molecule, it makes green blood. And that's what plant blood is chlorophyll and all that is plant blood. So when you consume green things, that magnesium releases, and then it helps you build hormones. So when you look at what most Americans eat, greens are not even really on the radar at all. And that's your biggest source of magnesium. So beans and greens, fermented foods we'll talk about too, but beans and greens are great sources of magnesium. The other one, let me see if I have this up already. Zinc, B6. Yeah, I'll post, I got two of those. I'll post those. And then with B6, let me post those for you. The B6 foods, those are going to be foods that are typically, I always say beans and greens and fermented foods are B6 foods. But this list here is by descending order. So let me post that in here. And that's a long post. But you can see on there, summer squash, spinach, bell peppers, turnips, mushrooms, especially shiitake mushrooms, garlic's in there, tuna, cauliflower, mustard greens, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, collard greens, green beans, asparagus. So very quickly you can see that it's lots and lots of greens make up B6. And I posted a picture. Let me see if I can post this too. What Americans eat. Because there's a really interesting study, and they looked at what Americans eat within 1 year. Let's see. Did you see that one?
I didn't.
Okay. Let me...
There was a book out that had a lot of... have you seen that book?
Yeah. Now that one's What the World Eats.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great book too. Because they did 80 countries, and they looked at what those people ate in a week. So they had the families and then all their food for a week. Mm-hmm. And very quickly you could tell how healthy they are from what they eat. And the Americans, it was like normal food, like super healthy food for some of the poorest countries. And then when you get into kind of like the European kind of countries, you start seeing a little bit of dairy added, a little bit more meat. And then when you get to America, it's just processed nonsense.
Yeah.
So, well, that didn't come up.
We've got a couple of questions on here while you're...
Sure, I'll keep looking for this and you tell me.
Yeah, so Kim is asking, does cooking greens reduce the amount of available nutrients?
So greens are one of the things that actually increases nutrition when you cook it lightly.
He said lightly.
Lightly.
Yeah.
So in fact, if you cook greens and you steam them, the water underneath has 3 times more antioxidant value than the greens above. The greens are off the chart anyway, so really high. But then that water left in the bottom with all those nutrients, bioflavonoids, is even more nutrition. And the key is cooking it low and slow with a little bit of warmth. Sometimes like iron skillet with olive oil, some onions, Put your greens in there, put a lid over it. It'll steam it real fast, and then you're good to go. But
so it is true to some degree, though, that it depletes from the spinach if it's down in the bottom of your pan when you've steamed it, right?
What do you mean?
That the minerals and the vitamins are in the water and not in the actual.
Well, no.
Greens.
I mean, because it's kind of like having $1 million and then like there's 3 million in the bottom.
Okay.
Like there's still just maximum
Plenty.
nutrition.
Okay.
Right.
There's
right,
plenty. Okay. Hi everybody. Hi Katina, Kim, Kathy. Okay. Kathy says most of those foods you listed she doesn't like.
Well, that's okay. They like you.
There's something in there.
They like your hormones. Well, okay. So let me let me see if I can find it online real quick. So the other thing is, what about like zinc-rich foods?
Zinc-rich foods.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So zinc
I rarely think about zinc. Does anybody else think about zinc? I don't.
I dream about zinc sometimes. So, zinc is in the ground, so basically it's going to be roots and squashes, those kind of things. So pumpkin seeds are actually really great sources of zinc.
Okay.
And pumpkin seeds are also a great building block for progesterone, and so is pumpkin. And so this fall, in the next couple of weeks when you're making pumpkins, when you scrape out all those pumpkin seeds, you should actually roast those with a little olive oil and salt. I think it's like maybe 450 degrees, 15 minutes or something. I don't know. You gotta look it up. But those are fantastic. But they're full of zinc and they're full of phytonutrients that build your progesterone. And then otherwise, let me pull up the zinc ones here for you, and I'll post those. The nice thing is zinc is really high in Brazil nuts for building progesterone, but then it's also really high then in selenium for building thyroid.
Okay.
Here we go. So now when we're looking at the zinc, did I just do that wrong?
That's B6. I'm not sure.
All right, let me update it. See, I'm not. Here we go. B6. It didn't do anything there.
While we're waiting, Kathy says, can she eat lots of romaine lettuce to make up for all the others she doesn't like?
So romaine's going to have quite a few nutrients in there. It's better than head lettuce, of course, but it's not your go-to one. And so it's one of those things where, there we go, yeah, posted. So it's one of those things where if you're trying to just maintain hormones and you feel pretty darn good, then yeah, that's not so big of a deal. But if you're trying to say, okay, well, I'm 30 and I feel like crap and I want to live another 50 years and feel awesome, well, then I might have to eat some things that aren't my favorite.
Darn. Sorry.
Otherwise, there'd be vitamins and lots of cheese, and there'd be vitamins in bread, and there'd be lots of vitamins in butter and chocolate. Well, maybe a little bit of chocolate.
Right.
But no, the foods that we typically go towards are basically foods that help us feel a hormonal boost through things like dopamine, but then actually make less dopamine for us. And so that addiction to bread and dairy, typically will make us more depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
But the way out is those greens for sure. So on zinc ones, almonds, artichokes, avocados, bananas, blackberries, brewer's yeast. Now that's a really good one. Now brewer's yeast, not brewer's yeast, but nutritional yeast would be the same on this as far as nutrition. Nutritional yeast is like out of this world when it comes to B vitamins, zinc, and magnesium.
Okay.
And you can get that sometimes at the store. And a lot of people, I think it tastes like Parmesan a little bit, but it's great for putting on popcorn and pizza and gluten-free pizza and brown rice pasta, red sauce, and some nutritional yeast. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, when you look at these lists, and this is the take-home point over and over that I've had since I started doing kind of food as medicine is it's the same damn foods over and over.
Right.
It's not rocket science.
Now, I think what you'll also notice about these lists is there's nothing processed in there. There's no Triscuits or, whole wheat bread is even processed, right?
Right.
It's all whole foods.
Yeah, and that's why I've been saying this more recently, but like a horse doesn't have to figure out how to balance its hormones. Neither does a gorilla, neither does a shark.
That's because they're not tempted by the chip aisle.
That's right. So what that means is it's our own undoing when it comes to those things. And that's where you look at the countries that have the healthiest, longest living populations. It's not that complicated. They're just eating real, actual food in lots of variety.
Right.
The average American only eats 16 different foods a year. So whatever we're eating, that's all we're eating. And 85% of that is wheat and dairy.
Yeah.
In fact, let's, because you saw this a little ago. I'm going to still try to figure out if I can post this. It's not, it'll show up on my computer, but it doesn't show it up in the file. But if you look at this chart, so I'll post this in a little bit, but it shows the average American consumes 2,000 pounds of food a year.
Okay.
Okay? 500 pounds is directly dairy products. Not cheese, just dairy and yogurt.
So 1/4 of that.
And then 200 pounds is dairy beverages like milk for kids and stuff. And then 30 pounds is cheese, and 85 pounds is butter. 85 pounds. The average American consumes 85 pounds of butter a year.
Wow.
So, all of that is a hormonal nightmare. And literally half your diet, half of the average American diet, is estrogenic dairy that messes up your hormones. We'll talk a little bit more of that. The other thing is wheat flour, which is about 134 pounds of your food. Sugar, which is 140 pounds, or almost 150 now. And then corn syrup, which is 50. So that is 400 pounds. 400 pounds of sugar a year is what most Americans are consuming.
Yeah.
So what is it? 800 pounds of dairy, 400 pounds of sugar, and with juice or fruit, it's 272 pounds, but that's of juice, not fruit. And then of vegetables, it's 400 pounds of vegetables, but really as chips and French fries.
Right.
And so if you look at what Americans eat, and you say, gosh, why do they have hormonal problems? Yeah, no, they should. They should have hormonal problems.
Right.
They should fall apart. That's all eating for emotions. That's not eating for sustainability.
Right.
And that's that simplicity, too, of
You might benefit in the short term on your taste buds, but what happens in the long term with that? And then who actually is benefiting in the long term? Those are the companies, right?
Yeah.
Companies making the products.
And if you think we consume 24 pounds of coffee, 24 pounds of coffee beans a year. 24 pounds. So that's 2 pounds a month. 2 pounds a month. And all that means is we are stressed out of our freaking minds, and we have to use 2 pounds of coffee at 100 to 200 milligrams of caffeine for a small cup just to function hormonally.
Right.
As our whole life crashes around us, we just use all that caffeine to try to cope.
Yeah.
And then all the things that we talk about, here's how you reverse it. Here's how you get your B6. Here's how you get your zinc. Here's how you get your magnesium. It's not what Americans eat anymore at all. I mean, it really isn't. And so knowing the physiology, knowing the biology, and then knowing what people eat, it's predictable. Yeah.
It becomes obvious once you look at all this stuff. This chart's really great. Hopefully he'll get that posted up here pretty soon. But it's nice to have a picture because, half of that, you can just look at half of the diet and see how unhealthy it is.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can post this. Dun, 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 dun. That didn't work.
Okay.
All right, let me see
We're
if I...
trying.
It says move.
Tina says, did you say drink beer for that nutritional yeast?
Maybe. Well, you know...
Of course.
So beer is soda for adults. But red wine is hormonally... It's going to boost and calm your hormones. Yeah? All right. Let's see here. How do I add? It doesn't allow me to add. All right. Well, I'll add that at the very end if I don't.
So Wendy says she's sitting at the 12 brew right now getting decaf.
12 brew. I know, and that's the thing is remember there's good coffee, there's bad coffee, and there's horrible coffee. And good coffee is once in a while I enjoy some coffee. Bad coffee is that my hormones suck so badly that I have to use caffeine as a crutch. And then horrible coffee is I put a bunch of crap in that coffee.
Yeah.
So.
She's wondering if you could post. Tina's wondering if you can post it on your page.
Well, I can. It's just not letting me post for some reason right now. But I'll post it at least somewhere throughout this or at the end. And then, you know, another really good nutrient, which I typically don't worry about, because, again, if you just eat fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and berries and legumes and greens, if you eat real food, you don't have to worry about it. But that's vitamin E.
Okay.
And if you look at the common factors of all this, it's nuts, seeds, greens, and beans.
Okay.
Right? And in fact, there's a study that shows 2 handfuls of 2 handfuls of cashews. No, it's 1.
2. You told me 2
2?
earlier.
All right, it's 2.
Yep.
2 handfuls of cashews throughout the day is just as effective as 1 Prozac for curbing depression. That's pretty powerful. So you have to eat nuts so you don't go nuts. Right.
Ha ha!
They should make a nut called Go Nuts.
Go Nuts.
Oh, they probably do. Yeah.
Okay.
That's weak. So there's not food. Sorry, I still got a little cough. All right, so there are not foods that directly convert to progesterone because we go through cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone, then to cortisol, right? And so we don't really make progesterone-rich foods, except for maybe diascorea, which is like wild yam. But otherwise, it's what foods build progesterone for our body. And that's the key, is we don't want to do bioidentical therapy where we give you progesterone and then you downregulate your own production of progesterone, because that's a short-term fix that has long-term consequences.
Yeah.
And back when I used to do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, you were the greatest for 3 months at a time, and all you did was keep upping the dose until you couldn't anymore. And because I taught anatomy and physiology for 6 years at colleges, I was like, okay, well, we're just messing things up. How can we fix it normally? And that's the thing, is I think I said this last time, but most natural medicine docs are taught by supplement companies and lab companies. And so there isn't that kind of discerning comment of, or question of, well, hey, how do we do this naturally if there were no supplements? What would we do then? Right? Why are these other people in other countries, how are they 100 years old and still pumping out hormones and feeling great? You know, that's ridiculous that we can't do that.
Yeah.
So it always goes back to that physiology and the basic biochemistry.
Yeah, and for those of you who are joining us tonight and didn't join us last week, watch last week's talk if you're interested in the process of the synthesis of how these hormones are made, through which pathways and what nutrients are used for those pathways to create these. Right now we're talking mostly about progesterone, but check back at our other video on Dr. Garrett's page.
Yeah.
You can find that.
Yeah, all those videos from since we started doing this is at on my Facebook under videos, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's the simple part, right? So building progesterone becomes very easy because, again, it's very simple food. Your orange foods are some of your best foods, like carrots, pumpkins, squashes, pumpkin seeds. Those things are awesome. But again, the rest of it's just beans and greens and brown rice and that kind of stuff. So that's the simplicity of it. Now, when it comes to like eating for thyroid, it's also pretty simple too, because your thyroid is a tyrosine molecule, which is amino acid, and we get tyrosine from lots of different foods, but mainly I think I have that on here too. Is tofu, which is soybean, so you want genetically modified? No.
Huh?
I was just trying to see if she's paying attention. You want organic, non-GMO.
I was taking notes.
So tofu. And then meats, but again, it's interesting, they actually discern out whether it's grass-fed, free-range, wild-caught when it comes to meat, because those are higher in things like tyrosine and even selenium and iodine, which is pretty cool. And then fish, of course. 85% of the world's population lives near the water, and they eat the fish from those waters, so then they really probably shouldn't have any thyroid problems ever. And you'll see that as we go through this. And then whole grains, but again, we're talking not wheat, but quinoa, brown rice, black rice, forbidden rice, purple rice, basmati rice, brown rice.
Yeah. There's a lot of the word... Yeah, I heard you twice.
What? All right.
There's a lot of whole grains on a lot of processed products in the grocery store.
There are, yeah.
Yeah. So don't be fooled.
Yeah, that was one of my first kind of ventures into eating a little bit healthier. Was I'd come home with like whole grain wheat bread, right? Because back then my knowledge was like, just eat whole grains. And my wife would be like, that's just crap. And so it would be like the first ingredient was like flour, whole grain. And so even though the label said whole grain, it was just actually crap. So,
well, the flour is made from whole grains. I'm wondering if they're just cheating that way. I mean,
yeah. Well, the other thing is quinoa. Instead
I
of
love
doing
quinoa.
instant rice, you would do, instant oats, you would do steel cut oats, which is the best, or old-fashioned oats, which is even really good, right? That's old school standard.
Yeah. These are great substitutes.
Yeah.
Steel cut
Millet's
yeah.
good.
Yeah, millet.
Amaranth. Teff.
Those of you who are gluten-free, who are experimenting, or those who have celiac or have some sort of trouble with gluten in general, these are great suggestions.
Yeah. So teff flour is like an Ethiopian flour. And then amaranth is a South American flour.
Okay.
And sunflower is a Kansas flour. All right. So you have tyrosine. So that's the building block. That's like the car. And then for thyroid to be really active, it needs to be T3. Because even 90% of T4 converts to T3. So you got to get the iodine onto the tyrosine and use selenium for that. And one Brazil nut a day will get you 100% of your selenium. So I always say, do 2.
All I remembered from everything you just said was one Brazil nut.
Yeah.
But all the rest of it was over my head.
You know what they call Brazil nuts in Brazil?
American nuts?
No, I forgot, but it wasn't Brazil nut. I had a Brazilian patient. I asked her, but
okay.
She thought I was dumb for calling them Brazil nuts.
Okay.
We have American nuts, but we call them politicians.
Yeah.
All right.
The jokes are just rolling off your tongue.
So then with selenium, fish, wild-caught fish, and then other grass-fed meat, that kind of stuff is fine.
And this is still for thyroid? Or no? Right.
Okay. Still for thyroid. And one of the sites I loved when I start doing this was worldshealthiestfoods.com. But it's WHFoods.com. And worldshealthiestfoods.com. You can put in there like iodine-rich foods, or tyrosine-rich foods, or vitamin E-rich foods. And it'll give you a list of all these foods. So it's not just like one or two that you see in people's blogs, but it's like really those. And it'll have very good sources, okay sources on it. And so you can really kind of look at those and figure out, all right, how am I going to meal plan from this? But I'll tell you the shortcut to it. It's fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, berry, legume, and green.
Whoa! Slow that down, mister.
That's all it is. So I used to be all into it, but it was just like, holy crap, it's just repeating the same crap over and over again, no matter what foods we looked at. And again, that's why if I'm in Costa Rica, I can have perfectly balanced hormones when I'm 80 and not have to read a book about it. Because I eat fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, legumes, and greens.
So we have a question about fish. What are the mercury concerns for eating a lot of fish?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jairus. Hi, Jairus.
So most concerns about mercury in fish are way less than you'll ever get from mercury in your mouth, right? Or mercury from the flu shot. So that's one of the things is that is way less than all the other sources of mercury. But mercury, again, is neurotoxic. So basically there's a grid of 4 things, right? You have the least amount of mercury, highest amount of mercury, lowest omega-3s, highest omega-3s. And this section here is your best one. And I'll see if I can't find that. Rich in omega-3. So your salmon, tuna, halibut, mackerel, cod, sardines, anchovies. Those are your highest omega-3s, and highest in all the other nutrients we need, and least amount of mercury. Okay. Now, the only caveat of that is tuna, and that's because tuna is like 500, 600, 700 pounds, huge bioaccumulator, and that's the highest risk you have. But now we have radioactive cesium in the tuna, so probably don't want Pacific tuna anyways. And then never tuna that's named, like albacore, yellowfin, bluefin. Those are all the ones down at the bottom that are less omega-3 but more mercury.
So just your basic tuna, non-Pacific.
Yeah.
Correct? Wild caught.
Yeah, wild caught.
Non-Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. And here's a chart I'm going to post. And this will have your balance of omega-3s. Well, I don't know. Will it? It posted. All right. So I posted that one. And so you can see there the mercury gets higher as you go down. Omega-3s get higher as you go across to the right.
Okay.
So from that, you can figure out very quickly how nutritious things are. But it's always those wild-caught, cold water, fatty fish that are sustainable. That's your best nutrition when it comes to balancing out your thyroid.
Yeah.
And then, so that's the selenium to get it on there. And then the other thing is iodine. So we said T3 means triiodo, which means 3 iodine. T4 is tetraiodo, which means 4 iodines. But the goal is to have 3 iodines on there because that becomes your bioactive one at the very end. And so T4 converts 90% to T3 unless you have high stress, and then it won't, and then we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. So that's a whole big issue, but it's secondary to stress. So same thing. When we talked about before, thyroid problems are usually adrenal problems.
Okay.
So with iodine, there becomes an issue. So people are like, should I take iodine or should I just eat iodine? I'm going to say you need to eat iodine. Because if you take iodine, you can actually cause some problems. And the types of iodine that they use sometimes are toxic. So Lugol's is probably your best, but there's other ones that are problematic.
And you're talking about people that struggle with thyroid.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to eat iodine as your staple for iodine. And you do that through the ocean. The ocean is full of iodine, and that's captured in sea salt. So real sea salt is full of iodine.
Okay.
And that's Himalayan salt or black salt or Kala Namak or what else? Gray salt.
Grape salt.
Angelina Jolie was salt in that movie. I don't know if that counts. But black salt, or let's say straight Himalayan salt, it's pink, right? Real salt that you want is discolored. And it's discolored because of 40 to 80 other minerals in there. So you're actually taking a mineral supplement every time you salt your food with real actual sea salt. Okay. And for most salt, what they do is they have little kind of like lagoons that when the ocean rises, it fills up these lagoons, and when the ocean lowers, it just dries up and becomes solid salt, and then they crack it up and sell it to people.
Okay.
So that's what you want. What you don't want is Morton's iodized sea salt. You don't want where they purify the salt so it's clear, and then they add in a chemical iodine.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 So real sea salt. And you can get really cool with your sea salt. And like we put a big sprig of rosemary in a jar, glass jar, filled it with our sea salt, closed it off for a few weeks, and then you get flavored sea salts.
Why do they process the salt that way?
What do you mean?
Why do they process it and add the iodine? I mean, salt is salt, right? It's all sea salt.
Well, that's a good question. But it's probably because it's all dirty, and they're like, sometimes our idea is like, we'll purify it and then we'll add stuff back in it. Kind of like white bread. A white bread factory, like they described in Twinkie Deconstructed, is 5,280 feet long. It is a mile long to make bread because the first half of the bread process is taking all the nutrients out of it, and then the second half is putting synthesized vitamins back into it. Why the hell would we do that? That's ridiculous, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing.
So Jairus was asking, so if you buy sea salt at the grocery store, is there a good source of iodine in it?
Yeah, there should be. If it's real sea salt, yeah.
Okay.
So you really want the darker colored ones, but yeah. And I love going to Tuesday morning for kind of designer sea salts because they're usually like dirt cheap. Like you'll save 70-80% on this.
Okay.
So, and then you'd be highfalutin with your sea salt.
How do you know if it's real sea salt? Katina's asking.
So I usually will say like sea salt. I mean that's.
It says so.
It says sea salt, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, otherwise is the purified salt is clear. Real sea salt is not clear.
Okay.
That's how I know.
Okay. Look at the labels. That's probably the best you can do, right?
Right. And just look at the clarity of it too.
Yeah.
You know, that's usually the big giveaway with that.
So here's the thing. So if you're supplementing, I mean, can you go overboard with salt trying to get your iodine with salt? You still want to moderate that, right?
You do, but 80% of excess salt comes from not what you put on there, but what the companies put in there. And so if you go to like Chili's restaurant and you get an old timer with cheese, there's enough salt in there for 3 days, right? And so it's if you get canned goods, if you get processed foods, the whole goal is how much salt can we put in there to either create a brain addiction. So in a book like The End of Overeating by Kessler or by Sugar, Salt, Fat, which is a new book that's based off the same thing, they talk about how they can manipulate sugar content to create addiction so you'll buy more of that food. And it's not secret like conspiracy stuff. It's very open out there. Everybody talks about it in the food industry. And so, it's not what you're adding. It's going to be what... buying processed crap is where you end up with the problem. Because they were saying salt's bad, but then that's ridiculous because salt runs sodium potassium pumps that run all your muscles, all your nerves, your brain, everything. And so then people started doing low salt or salt replacement, and then the scientists came back out and were like, whoa, you can't do low salt for too long. That's dangerous to your health. So then they came back out and said, okay, it's not what you're adding, it's what we're adding. Well, we need to stop doing that, but we don't.
Yeah.
Because it's profitable.
Balanced perspective on that.
So if you're worried about salt content, all you need to do is drink a hell of a lot more water. So if you drink excess water, you'll flush all that out anyways.
Okay.
Otherwise, just stop eating processed crap so much.
Okay. Darlene's asking, what about taking kelp?
Well, okay, so that's the next part, is the plants absorb the iodine in the ocean. So kelp is a wonderful way to get iodine. Most Americans, we don't eat kelp, even though it's all around the coast area. And there's some really cool looking kelp. They even have kelp that tastes like bacon. So that's pretty good, right? So the plants in the ocean suck up that iodine. So if you eat those, that's a really good source. Your Japanese, they consume the most iodine of any nation. And that's about 12,000 micrograms. a teaspoon, I believe, or 1 serving of seaweed, which kelp, is actually 3,000 micrograms. And when you consume excess iodine, it goes to these pool storages in your body, and when those overflow, then you just pee it out.
Okay.
So one of the tests that you can do is you can do a certain amount of iodine by mouth, and then they collect your urine for 24 hours, and then you send that in and see, did you pee out any iodine? If you didn't pee out any, then you really need iodine.
Oh, okay.
If you pee it all out, or a certain amount out, then you're saturated, then you're fine. Some people do the patch test where they put iodine on their skin, and then you check back in a certain amount of time, and if you absorb it, your body needs it. If you don't, then you don't need it.
Okay.
That's theoretically meaningful. The lab test is the easiest way, but who gives a crap? You still need to eat this stuff, so just eat it.
Yeah.
Right? So dried kelp is basically, you want to buy the crunchy, dried, little teeny black spots, or wakame, and just eat it like a crunchy, salty snack. Or put it in your soups, put it in your sauces. If you put it in water and let it sit for about 10 minutes, it becomes like the size of spinach leaves. And then you can make like a little toasted sesame Asian dressing, and then make a salad or put it in your soups and sauces like that too.
Okay.
And so every time you add those to soups and sauces, it stews, you're getting a hormonal boost from that with your thyroid.
Okay.
Yeah? And then something like dulce is pretty good. Nori is probably the most popular one. And nori's that like green sheet of paper that you can buy at Walmart or Dillon's. That's seaweed. And that's also what you see in California rolls, when they roll it up and they cut it in like little sushi rolls. Mm-hmm. That green part is nori. Now nori only has 65 micrograms of iodine, so it's a good source, but it's not as crazy intense as kelp is. But kelp is pretty crazy intense as far as flavor too. So nori's mild, kelp's strong. Kelp you probably want to add to other stuff. Nori you can just sit there and eat the paper. Our kids do that. In fact, our middle one, maybe the twins do this too, but when we get nori, they'll like, there's a stack of like, I don't know, 30 of them, and they'll just like disappear. They're gone. They just steal them and eat them.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in that kind of family, so I don't know what to do with these girls.
I grew up with stealing Pringles.
That's right, yeah.
And Doritos.
Yeah, we stole crap. We didn't steal seaweed.
And cookies.
Right?
Right.
And our girls eat tofu, organic tofu, uncooked, like plain. Like, I have to, like, sear it and put some seasoning on it to eat it. They just eat it raw. Or not raw, but, you know, just regular. And big chunks, too.
It's probably because they're aliens.
A bunch of hippies in my family. We're creating hippies. We're all drinking kombucha and eating tofu.
Yeah.
You know.
So those were our nutrients for thyroid.
Yeah, oh, and then the other thing, the last thing, though, of that food chain is the salt, then the plants, and then the fish that eat the plants, or the fish that eat the plants that get eaten by a bigger fish. So then you're back to your wild-caught fatty fish.
Okay.
See how it all goes back to
Circle of
fish.
Life. Yes.
Should be called Circle of Fish.
Circle of Fish.
Circle Fish. Circle Fish. That's what it should be called.
Tiffany says bacon-flavored kelp, prove it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
She's just not a believer.
It came out in don't sign my name to this, but I'm just saying, I saw it on Facebook, so A, it's got to be real, and B, it was part of a university study where they were doing something to make, I don't know if they made it taste like bacon, or the originally tastes like bacon.
Well, she's going to go out searching for it, I think.
But if you have any questions, email me. Literally, you should be able to, I mean, something that tastes like bacon, I mean, you should be able to Google seaweed bacon, and it'll come up like that.
Okay.
Let me see. Seaweed bacon.
All right.
You guys ready for this? Seaweed bacon. I don't know how we lived life before. It looks like bacon, tastes like bacon, but it's seaweed. All right, so I'm gonna put this on Facebook or on. Hey, I'm posting this to Facebook while I'm on Facebook, talking about Facebook. Okay, so this stuff, yeah. So It's red seaweed called dulse,
Okay.
and it's eaten by people for millennia.
Yep.
Interesting.
The original bacon-flavored treat.
You know, I've never heard anybody talk about bacon-flavored seaweed, so I don't know. I'm a little skeptical, but it might be like fake cheese, right? People ask me all the time, well, does the fake cheese taste like real cheese? Well, if you don't eat real cheese for a long time, it tastes a lot like real cheese. Or if caramel tastes like chocolate.
But if you're doing the Pepsi taste test, you're gonna notice the difference.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you know that they have at the.
Do you recommend fake cheese? Sorry.
I don't know.
He recommends Whole Foods.
It's sketchy.
I don't even know why I asked.
It's like Frankenstein cheese. So, you know, if they make almond cheese or something, that's okay, or pistachio cheese. I had a pistachio cheesecake with a nut crust at Lotus Leaf, and it was the bomb.
You've talked about this before.
Freaking good.
Still on your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you make your nut milks, puree that up, and make a nut cheese kind of thing. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
If you do that, you're in the final stages of hippiedom.
Hey, why you gotta be a hater?
And then you're composting your own poop and living in a tiny house.
Off the grid.
Off the grid. That's right. So yeah.
So, can we recap real quick? So, tonight we have talked about the foods that make progesterone, right?
Right. That build the nutrients that build progesterone, yeah.
To help build it. Okay.
Yeah.
The foods that help build progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the foods that help build thyroid.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And so those are your two big happiness pathways. Now, dopamine's interesting. We talked about dopamine just a little bit last time. Dopamine usually becomes fight or flight, epinephrine, which is anxiety. But you can help promote that through fava beans, which are broad beans. And it's interesting because in the U.S., we don't really eat those. It's usually part of like a 11-bean salad or something like that. But fava beans, which you can buy, are packed full of L-dopamine, which literally cross the blood-brain barrier and then saturate your brain with dopamine. So it's the feel-good bean.
Yes.
And the way you typically eat them is you take a spoon and bend it, and then you crush the bean up, and then you use a light...
Please stop.
No, okay.
Please stop.
It's dopamine. Dopamine. You crush it up,
Every
and then you
show.
get a $100 bill, and then...
Every
No?
show.
Oh.
Every show. So, just letting you know.
I'm on season 3 of Breaking Bad, so that might influence part of how I explain this.
Okay.
All right.
Dopamine, though, what are some of the things that dopamine are associated with that are addictive? So, like, alcohol, doesn't alcohol...
Well, what's interesting is there's this study that says that the American brain shrinks up to 4% by the time you become overweight, 10% by the time you become obese, right? Did you know that?
Yeah, I think you've said that before,
Yeah. So I'd like to quote myself on this. Does that legitimize this?
Yeah.
So we can shrink our brain up to 10% by what we eat. And the way that works is if we saturate our brain with things that artificially raise dopamine, then your body will then desensitize to that dopamine, and then you start making less and less and less.
Right.
And so what happens is, let's say you eat cake, right? And cake for you makes happiness. And that cake raises dopamine. That's why you feel dope or happy when you're a kid and you eat cake.
Yes.
So your brain then creates a memory that says, oh, when we eat cake, we feel good. But then you eat more and more cake because you like to feel good.
Yes.
So then you eat cake and cake and cake. And then eventually, cake no longer gets you the same sensation with dopamine as it used to. And so now we then try to eat more and more cake because we want to reach that high plateau that we used to be. And then eventually, we really start degenerating those parts of the brain to the point where a functional MRI of someone who's overweight looks like someone who's alcoholic or a hardcore cocaine user.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
And then eventually, by the time you become overweight, you're literally chasing the dragon to get that feeling that you used to have. So like maybe someone drank a Dr. Pepper when they were young, and that they could clean the whole house, right? And the next thing you know, they could drink a whole 6-pack and they can barely get anything done.
Yeah.
But in their mind, it says, if I drink this, I will feel good. But it never happens because it downregulates dopamine so much.
Yeah, I'm still wrapping my brain around the foodstuffs and thinking about that as a down regulator. Foods that we eat. So like cake is like Coke.
Right.
Right?
Cake is crack.
Cake is crack.
Cake is crack.
Cake is crack.
And if you think of birthday parties, think about that. So it's candy, which is more addicting than cocaine. It's wheat and dairy, the cake and the ice cream, which have morphine in there. And so we basically at a birthday party for a kid is giving them crack and morphine, and then be like, why won't you calm down, Billy? Right? And then when we're older, we can eat that, and it's just like, I used to be happy when I ate this.
So for Halloween, folks, you should give out fava beans.
If you care about your neighbors, you will give them fava beans.
That's right. Even if they don't understand it.
That's right.
You just throw a handful.
I'm going to give zinc supplements, some B6 supplements, maybe some B12, methyl B12 sublinguals.
Yes.
If I really like their costume.
That's right.
And then otherwise, I'll give them beans and some greens. I'll probably throw some tofu at them. Yes. Yeah.
Don't go to his house for Halloween.
You'd be happy. So the last thing that we want to touch on before we go is estrogen dominance, and that's usually when you talk about symptomatic, really symptomatic progesterone deficiencies, it's because of estrogen dominance. Okay. And so progesterone, think of progesterone protects you against estradiol, which is E2, which is only one of the estrogens, the noxious one. And outside of puberty, it shouldn't be high anymore. And that's the one that if progesterone is this high and estrogen's this high, you're good. But as we start exhausting that as cortisol, and we don't eat for it, it doesn't take much before estrogen is now dominant or not suppressed by progesterone. And then that's where you get the endometriosis and the fibroids and the PMS and the PMDD and the EPMD from the 1980s.
Hi, I'm Holly, and I have all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that becomes your
I know
hot
I'm not the
mess
only one.
or hormonal nightmare or...
Tiffany says estrogen dominance at her house too. Thank you, Tiffany. We gotta stay together, stick together, support one another.
And literally every woman over 35 should be like, yeah, that's me. Because you're an American. You eat like American, drink like American. You will exhaust your hormones like an American. So, one of a few things that are horribly estrogenic. So not only does the stress bring down or still progesterone to make cortisol, but we have things that raise estrogens that are chemicals. So something like xenoestrogens, which I think we talked about a little bit. But there's three main ones that we want to talk about. One is phthalates, and that is like, they're kind of plasticizers. It's plastic number 3, and it's the one that binds oils to water. So basically, that's perfume. Synthetic perfume. So when you spray synthetic perfume on you and it touches your skin, it absorbs in, and 90% of that will be absorbed into your blood within the first 10 minutes. And you get a direct estrogenic effect from that.
Calvin Klein is giving you PMS.
That's right. That's right. He gave me a cold sore. I'm just kidding.
Xeno
he just
means
gave me a hug.
Foreign.
What? Yeah,
Did
xeno
you say
means
that?
foreign.
Xeno means foreign. So
like
foreign,
xeno.
think foreign estrogens.
Right. Okay. So, Calvin Klein. So, yeah. So, essential oil perfumes. You can look up blends that you can make, and some of them smell just incredible.
It's a good substitute.
Yeah. There's some woman that came in my office once, and I was like, "Oh my God, is that Mademoiselle? Or sorry, is that Coco Chanel Mademoiselle? Because that smells incredible." And she said, "No, it's just 3 essential oils." And so I was like, "Wow, that's impressive." Yeah. But all perfume, all cologne was just essential oils before.
Originally.
And then we synthesize them, make them out of basically petroleum byproducts. And then BPA, that's a pretty popular one, but it's almost people do BPS, which is then just as toxic and estrogenic. So you never want to drink out of plastic as much as humanly possible, especially plastic number 7. 7 is the most estrogenic when it comes to drinking containers. And even I was drinking from my Nalgene, which is my hiking one, and I was lecturing about this stuff, and someone said, Dr. Garrett, what number of plastic do you have? And I was like, damn it. It was plastic number 7.
The Nalgene bottles are?
Yes. Even the Camelbacks, it sucks.
Oh.
I spent a pretty penny on that thing. And so then you just switch to glass. So you went glass with a silicone lid, and you're all good.
Get your Visionware back out. Do you remember Visionware?
I don't know what Visionware is.
Does anybody remember Visionware? The cooking glass?
Is that the brown clear?
Yes, it's brown clear glass.
Oh my gosh, we had those.
Visionware. Yes.
That's old school. Those are called member berries.
What's
Do you know
that?
what member berries are?
No.
Member berries are when you're on Facebook and it says, "Hey, do you remember when you used to open the quick can with a knife or a spoon?
Okay.
Hey, you remember riding a big wheel?
Turn the cassette. If anybody knows
with a pencil." Those are member berries.
All right.
Those are emotional distractors. But I love member berries.
What Tammy's asking, what about stainless bottles?
So stainless bottles, they also spray. I mean, that's where you get the BPA from. So then they switch to BPS. The ones that don't have either one, I don't know what the hell they spray in those. I don't know. So we get BPA, BPS free for our children for like their thermoses. I don't know what they spray in them because it doesn't say at that point. But hopefully it's something like plastic number 2 or something that's the least toxic.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's part of the anti-corrosion stuff.
What about styrofoam?
Yeah. So styrofoam is a huge one because the way that you get all those estrogens to leach out into the into the food or the drink is by heating it up. So what do we put in styrofoam?
Hot drinks.
Hot drinks.
And soup.
So this winter, no styrofoam. Ditch that stuff. Bring your own mug with you, wherever. Even at church, they'll have their styrofoam cups, and I bring my mug. And I'm really surprised that there's actually quite a few people that do just bring their own.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. So your naysayer is going to say, yeah, but it's not that much to make a difference. It's not doing that much, like, with your xenoestrogens, with your plastic and your styrofoam.
Oh, hell no. So, then...
so what do you say to that?
I say, don't make me read you, write you, erase you, Xerox you, fax you, and shred you with some research, right?
Okay.
So, there's studies that show there's enough bisphenol A that if a pregnant woman with a fetus in her, probably because she's pregnant, touches a thermal receipt, which has bisphenol A on it, there's enough bisphenol A in that's going to be absorbed to actually cause anal genital malformation in that developing fetus. What? That's what I tell her.
Actual research.
That's research.
Actual
research.
Actual.
Oh, actual, okay. Yeah, you didn't think I knew that, did you?
So it is potent.
It's very potent.
Of course I thought you know that.
Okay. So what then decreases 90% of that toxicity?
Not using those things.
Fruits and vegetables.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not only is not using them an option, but you can also
detoxify. Yeah.
Detoxify.
So that way you don't have to freak out about everything. You just got to make sure.
Because you're not going to get away from it.
Right. So lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, lots of fiber-rich food, and lots of healthy natural oils like flax and chia and fish. Those oils actually help bind to those chemicals and excrete them from the body.
Woohoo! We
Yeah.
have an out. Kendra says she drinks cold out of styro. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's bad. So it's bad, but it's not as bad. It's kind of like drinking out of cold styrofoam is getting a cold sore here. Drinking out of hot styrofoam is getting a cold sore down there.
That's a nice.
Is that a good comparison?
One is One is bad and one is worse.
Right? They're both bad, but
right.
one's worse.
Right.
That's a good... Yeah? I don't know.
It's something.
I got that from her, I think. I think
swear.
she's the one that told me
I
that,
swear.
and then I regurgitated it. So if it's bad and you don't like it, it's because she said it. But if you do like it, I like to take credit for that.
There is only one evil genius here tonight, and it's not me. I'm just saying. Are we okay?
I don't know. It's still showing.
Okay.
All right. So the other thing is, so styrene, phthalates, BPA, and then pesticides is the last thing. And so pesticides, there's an interesting website called whatsonyourfood.org, I believe. Sorry. Let me post that one. I'll figure it out. It's always I always get the name wrong, but nope, that's not it. Okay. What's in my...
Can you guys still see us? We have a little notification on our phone here, just asking.
Okay, so here's the website. What'sinmyfood.org. So I posted that in the feed. And in there you can look up any food on the right side, and it'll tell you how toxic it is and every pesticide that's on it after it reaches the store. So something as simple as like an apple. An apple has 200 chemicals sprayed on it during its life cycle. By the time it reaches the store, a non-organic apple will have 47 pesticide residues. That's not so bad, right?
It's only 47.
It's only 47. Come on, out of 200? Right. That's pretty damn good. Except 16 of them are direct hormonal disruptors. And so it'll tell you exactly the names of those chemicals.
Okay.
And 16 of them actually disrupt your reproductive process.
Wow.
So you can have infertility because you eat inorganic apples. Or you can have endometriosis because you eat non-organic apples.
Okay.
So that's one of the big things. And there's also the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And so...
does anybody know any of the Dirty Dozen foods? You can throw them out there if you know them.
I know one, apples.
Apples. We talked about apples.
Apples struck in wood. No, that's not how you say that. Let's see.
One that I was familiar with before was strawberries.
Yeah, strawberries. And that's, it's kind of interesting, too, with pesticides because America might ban pesticide use like, not thalidomide, DDT. We ban it here. But actually,
Go ahead.
They might ban it, but then they sell it. We're the number one exporters of that. So then we sell it to another country. They spray those crops with it, and then we import that stuff from places like Chile, and it's actually more toxic than if you got it from America. So that's a pretty big issue, country of origin with those. And so strawberries, that's one of those ones that you gotta buy organic because it will mess up your estrogen. Oh, and I forgot, coffee. We talked about that. That raises estrogen.
Coffee does?
Yeah, one of my biggest books up on my shelf, Science and Chemistry. No, there's Chemistry and Success. That's a really good book, but it's just super detailed about stuff. But that's one of the first places I ever read that coffee raises estrogen.
Do you know how many people are crying inside right now?
I know. But that's why you got to eat lots of progesterone-rich foods, so that way you end up balancing that out.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, if the more you stay away from the synthetic estrogens, the more you can have that coffee and not have that detrimental effect.
Yeah.
So a little bit's okay, but you really have to protect yourself against all the other stuff.
Yeah. We have got some great comments. My phone died, so I can't see your comments. So I'd like to address them, but I don't know if we'll get to them for this talk.
And I'm going to post.
So don't feel ignored. It's not on purpose.
So I'm going to post this Dirty Dozen list for you, but it also has the Clean 15. So as you go through stuff, you're kind of like, well, I can't afford to buy everything organic, So you look at the dirty dozen and you say, okay, out of those things, that's what I need to invest in organic.
And some people did put out their dirty dozen
Spinach.
ones that they knew. So, Katina, spinach,
Oh.
Brianna had a whole list.
You know, kale makes that list too, and that's a very popular one. And I was very surprised with collard greens. Oh, Brianna, yeah, you have a whole bunch.
Yeah.
All right, that's...
A friend of mine made a little card and laminated it and keeps it in her wallet so she can look at it while she shops.
Oh, like a birthday card?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So that's one way to do it. You could just look at your phone too. Save this on your phone and look at that when you go grocery shopping. I thought the little credit card was kind of cute.
Yeah, you know, with the ones that are kind of in between these, basically you just want to do a little vinegar wash and soak your food, wash them off, get rid of the pesticides, and put them in the fridge.
Vinegar wash, okay.
Yeah, apple cider vinegar, or even white vinegar, which is acetic acid. It's fine.
Okay.
So I can't remember
It's a good tip.
time. You have to look it up online, like Wellness Mom or somewhere. I mean, that's a very standard thing, but you don't have to buy anything extraordinary when it comes to like a vegetable wash. Just a little bit of water, vinegar, even rinse them off. It is your bare minimum.
Okay.
So, all right. So our takeaway from this is reduce your exposure to things that dramatically increase estrogen, and rebuild progesterone and thyroid
Through Whole Foods.
through whole foods.
If possible.
Yeah. And then if you want to supplement to help kind of get you there faster, that's your Country Life Coenzyme B complex. That's at any health food store. And that's reduced B vitamins, which then will boost your ability to make progesterone and dopamine and serotonin and melatonin faster. Mm-hmm. And then methyl B12, we talked about 5,000 micrograms of that. That'll get you. And I'll take that stuff like, I was telling someone today that if I have brain fog, like I'm a workaholic, and sometimes I'll work way too late. And then the next morning I got to see patients, but I got to be sharp. And so if I'm just kind of dragging, I might take 5 of those 5,000 micrograms and put them under my tongue. And by the time I get to work, razor sharp.
And it's safe because they're water soluble. So
yeah, you can't consume too much.
You just get rid of what you don't use.
Yeah. And the
so you were talking about supplements that build.
Oh, and the Natural Calm is magnesium citrate. That's a powder. And if you're doing stuff for your hormones, you want to do a powdered magnesium, and you want to make sure it's citrate. Carbonate absorbs 22%, citrate 66%, a gluconate's 88% or 80%. But a magnesium citrate in a powder is going to get you rapid absorption. And Natural Calm, though, that caveat is if you use too much, you're going to get diarrhea. So use it to bowel tolerance. And I think it's a teaspoon. It's like your standard dose, but really I tell people to do a half a teaspoon to prevent the diarrhea, just in case.
Okay.
With that. So it doesn't take much. But most patients, when they do those very basic things that then allow you to build or have the ingredients to build those hormones, very quickly they tend to feel a lot better. And then the long-term solution is not supplements. The long-term is the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, legumes, greens, as much as possible.
So when you start feeling better, can you then go off the supplement?
Oh, absolutely.
When you're consistently feeling better,
right,
that might be the time to transition or start thinking about getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's time, and again, some of that might wax and wane. There's times, I have 4 children, and there's times where, I need a daily B vitamin for a while, and then there's months and months, or maybe a year that goes by that I don't take anything, and then it's like, oh yeah, I gotta get back on. So like right now I have a little runny nose and just a tiny bit, and I've been having that little kind of postnasal drip that's causing a cough, and it's just like, yeah, I've been running the burning the candle at both ends in the middle for a while now,
right,
and eating a little less healthy, and staying up too late, and not getting enough sleep, and not getting exercise, and so there's a price to pay for all that, mm-hmm, and so that's that reminder of like, oh yeah, it's not echinacea, it's not colloidal silver, it's not vitamin C. That's that short-term fix, but what am I going to do so I don't get another cough?
To prevent it, right?
Right. So, because I like when I go years without any kind of getting sick, that's what you want.
Yeah.
And so these subtle reminders are like, oh yeah, get back on the wagon, go the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So. All right, if you guys... Right. Oh, so that's my takeaway is... what did I say?
What was your takeaway?
What was my takeaway? Something about brain fog or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, eat for your hormones, don't exhaust your hormones.
Yeah.
Which we're going to talk about the don't exhaust one with the thyroid. So we'll talk about a whole list of things that we can do to cause hormonal resiliency.
Yeah.
And then, so eat for your hormones, don't exhaust your hormones. And it's not all that crazy to do. So, what about you?
I think you've kind of covered it all. I do like having the examples of the foods, because where in the world do you start with all this information? And I guess maybe that brings me to my takeaway is start somewhere. And like you said, what was it? You said there was a certain percentage of things or a small percentage of what people eat when you, I don't know how to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, you see that people only eat the same things, right?
16 different foods a year.
16 different foods a year, right, yeah. Right. So if you, that's manageable. I was thinking when you said that, to substitute.
Right.
Right?
Well,
if you're only eating 16 different type foods a year, that's a number you can work with to supplement, to start changing it up.
Yeah.
That's 16 foods.
Well, it's all, I gotta say, I think for a lot of people it ends up being harder because they're so limited. Like, this is their view of food, and it's like, well, eat a jicama, or eat a, this kind of nut, or eat this kind of lettuce. It's just like, but I only eat these handful of things. Like, I don't even know what those other things are.
I think my point is that it's a good place to start.
Right.
Like, because I see what you're saying. You want variety. We should have variety.
We should have variety.
Right?
So get, like, you want to think Mediterranean. French cookbook, Italian cookbook, Indian cookbook, those kind of things.
Yeah.
The countries that live longer and healthier lifestyles, that's what you want to do, is what do they eat? Let's just eat like them.
Yeah.
So have like except for like German and Irish.
Yeah. Our next talk, we're going to talk some about the adrenals, I believe, and also more on the thyroid and whatever else Dr. G seems to think is applicable. Also, don't forget to put, any of those burning questions on the feed so we can see, and then we can tailor our talks going forward with what you guys are interested in. So stick with us. We've got 2 more weeks on balancing hormones. There's still a lot of good info and knowledge to be had.
Yep.
So.
All right, you guys. Make sure to share us. Like it at the bottom. I love that you guys are here, and this is such a great forum to kind of share information. Post your questions. We'll answer them afterwards, too. Otherwise, have a great night, and thanks for joining us tonight. Where are you going? Look at that. Oh, there you go.
Oh, wait.